think it's a good takeaway, I got to thank my dad, because he believed in me, and I don't know how far he saw it going, but he wanted to teach me hard work, and it's a big deal. So I think anyone who wants to start a business for their kids, you never know where it's going to end up, right? Teaching your kid to do that dog walking business or that lawn care business or that window washing business, like, it might start as like just a life lesson or a way that you can bond with your kid, because even after my dad printed those Big Ben's moving business cards, he would still come help me. So like my dad easily could have just started a moving company and just had me be his like top manager. He didn't do that. I don't know why. And I really owe him, that's why I try to take care of my parents, is because I owe them a lot.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Beyond Net Worth podcast. Today, our episode's a little bit different. We didn't have a guest on. Ben and I, we just talked to each other.
Yeah, we had got some feedback from some of you that we spend a little bit too much time just asking other people's stories. We want to hear some of ours. We feel like whenever we have a guest on, it's a precious opportunity to get as much knowledge as we can, but we took the time just to kind of dive into more about us. This is part 1 about me, and we'll do a part 2 about Callan soon.
Yeah, I think you guys will like the episode. You got to hear out. We'll probably put a social media post about this, but we're going to find out how Big Ben's moving service got its name. And so you got to listen and find that, because it's quite the story.
Might not be what you think. We'll see.
Thanks, everybody. Enjoy the show.
This episode is brought to you by Big Storage Ventures. We are now inviting you to team up and partner alongside us. We bring our experience hunting storage deals and maximizing the self-storage asset to provide our partners with cash flow, tax benefits, and appreciation, all in one recession-resistant asset. Leverage our sister company, Big Ben's Moving Service, to fill your facility and give you an edge over the competition. Reach out to bigstorageventures@gmail.com or DM Big Storage Ventures on Instagram to team up.
On the first podcast, did you talk at all? I don't remember you talking at all about how you started the business, right?
Not really. We just kind of glossed over it, and I think it's good for us to we've gotten feedback from other people just saying that they want to hear more about our story. We did that initial pilot episode, but I've been told that they want to hear more about what we do, who are we, what are our roots and our beginnings and stuff like that. And I feel like when we have a guest on, in my mind, I'm just thinking like, we only have a finite amount of time, and I want to pull out as much nuggets from our guest as we can. And sometimes we don't get to go deep on what we want to talk about, so I think it's a good opportunity.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, our last episode, you did touch a little bit about your corporate job.
Yes,
that you got, and I remember that vividly. I actually remember because me and Maddie were in those Morgan apartments by the school, and I remember having a conversation with you about that job. Like, it's just like a vivid memory burned into my brain. Because our whole college career, you wanted like a big corporate job. Like, that was like your goal, was it not?
Well, we've talked about it on the podcast before, and looking back, it was pretty pivotal, because I didn't know how big a blue collar service business could go.
At the time?
Sense? Like, yeah, like people question you on, or maybe people don't question you, but maybe you're just like, okay, this is just moving. Like, is this really gonna be as big of a cash cow as it needs to be to take care of my family? And the answer was yes, but at the time I didn't know that, right? I was still in college when I was making the decision, so I didn't have all my time to dedicate to it. But I think a big takeaway is just, if you have something that you are good at, that people appreciate, that you could scale, that's probably the answer. And I think my incentive for wanting to do the corporate job was experience, right? I thought the best way for me to get knowledge, even though I was making more money with my moving company already, just doing it part-time in college, I was like, okay, if I want to get to the top, I need proximity to these fancy executives at a tech sales job, right? At a big company.
A big tech company.
Right. It wasn't big tech company. But
I'm just thinking of all those Instagram videos that that one guy that does the impersonations of.
yes.
What's
his name? Austin Oso or something like that.
And he's doing all of like the tech company layoffs right now.
Yeah. Look up this guy, Austin Oso. He'll be on his videos and he'll be like,
they're so
the
funny.
caption's like tech guy at a bar. He's like, hello, I'm at a tech company. It's like,
oh, how much do I make?
You ask me when my stocks will vest? Oh, yeah. It's going to be 40%.
Yeah.
I drive a Tesla.
He's like, oh yeah, I make $300K.
So
those are so funny.
Yeah, he's like, let me explain to you Bitcoin back at my apartment.
That's what they started, and now every one of his videos now are just about getting laid off.
Yeah. Yeah, in the recession time, that tech bro is not as good.
No.
But not to digress too much, basically my mindset was just, I thought that would be the best way for me to get knowledge, right? Because I just underestimated how much knowledge you can get
in the real world.
Right? Like, I feel like obviously experience is the biggest teacher, and we're learning that fast with Big Storage Ventures. Like, I was on a call with Paul, and we talked about, all the different deals we have going on and everything he's helping us with. Paul's our lawyer, but he's just like, hey, I want to pause you for a second and just have you think about how valuable this experience you're getting is. And it was like, yeah, thanks for pausing me. Like, I know that in my head, but it's a good reminder because Big Storage Ventures is really in its infancy right now.
Definitely.
And so the experience that we're getting is priceless.
Well, I don't want to jump the gun. I mean, you had a question before that I was reading beforehand, and it was a little bit about that, just about Big Storage Ventures in general. Yeah. We'll get into that eventually, but I've thought so much about just the experience alone that we're getting is just, it's unreal. And we'll get into that, but
no, how it applies though is that you really, unless you can see how something's going to help give you knowledge, it might not give you the knowledge you want. And so that was what I was doing it for. And it was pivotal because right after that, I started learning from experience and learning from people. I started networking better. I started learning from people in my proximity, people that were doing the same types of businesses I was. And I feel like, you do have to be careful not to be too stagnant, but I feel like I have been learning looking back over the years, ever since I made that, I feel like I've been learning a lot more than I would have if I would have stayed there.
Well, I've always respected the decision you made. How much influence do you feel like that came from school? Because for whatever reason, you started feeling like in order to make it, you needed to get this corporate tech job. Or in order to get the experience that you needed, you had to get this corporate tech job. So where was that influence coming from? Like, why were you thinking that way?
Well, I can remember my parents bringing that up, right? Like, obviously my dad and my mom, they were really instrumental in supporting me with Big Ben's. Mm-hmm. I know that they believed in me, but I don't know they could have envisioned what it's turned into today.
Right.
So I think they were kind of trying to hedge for risk, right? Like, okay, if the moving company is not for him, what do we want? Do we want him to have any fallbacks? Right. And so I appreciate that they were looking out for me as far as fallbacks go. And here's a juicy story. Okay. So one of my ex's dad, right? Have you heard this? Have I told you this story?
I don't know what you're going to say. So just.
It's good. It's okay. Good. So we were sitting at this Mexican restaurant. Okay. I remember this vividly. And talking about his daughter, right? And like how I was supposed to take care of her, right? And he kind of questioned me, like, so you don't think that this moving company is really going to support you? Like, what's your real plan, right? And I kind of did believe it at the time because this was even back before I even was thinking about the tech job. This was before I had any other career options. Like, this was my business. This is all I was really up to besides football.
Right.
And I remember that, like, it was like I don't think I really listened to it. Like, I think I shrugged it off pretty well. But it's interesting that was a thing, right? That there was some doubt as to how far this blue collar service business could go. And so I remember that moment, he was kind of like poking at me a little bit, like questioning what I could do with this business. And, we broke up. It was bad bloodbath breakup, right? But then later, I remember, like, after I had graduated college, maybe I was just wrapping up college, but I had, a couple trucks, and I was having some real success by then, to where I remember he drove by one time and saw me, like, taking care of my trucks, and it just felt like, man, I'm glad I believed in myself. I'm glad I didn't listen to that, that voice of, like, doubt, and I just put my head down and worked, because at that point there was, like, momentum building, and it was providing a really good runway for the rest of my career. So that's just one little story I remember.
Yeah, it's funny the amount of pressure we would get from, like, in-laws, like, especially when you're posturing to get married, and you want to be like, they want you to take care of their daughter, but you also want to be like, yeah, I'm gonna be successful, but they look at certain things, and it could be, that's just how we always think about success.
Man, and this is a little bit of a tangent, but now I'm looking at, I have a daughter, and it's like, what kind of guy do I want her to marry? And I think what I'll take away is, like, when my daughter's getting married, hopefully it's not for a long time. That song, God Bless the Boy by Cody Johnson. He says, like, no one's ever going to be good enough, but bless the boy she decides to love. Yeah. And he says, I hope his dad's teaching him how to shake my hand, look me in the eye, work hard. So I think, especially in our culture in Utah, we get married sometimes before we have our career figured out. Yeah. I mean, especially you did. I mean, you got married before you had your career pinned down.
Yep.
So I think you got to look at someone's character more than necessarily, like, look at their character more than their path, because I think their character will correct their path, right? Like, I would rather have my daughter, engaged or dating someone who is honest, hardworking, loyal, like, selfless, and has no idea what they're going to do, than someone who's maybe on, like, some hotshot finance, or law school or some doctor trajectory, and maybe doesn't have those attributes. Because I think people drop out of med school. People, even if they do get that financial success, they might not have the work ethic to do it right. They might cut corners. It might have bad consequences later. So I'm on a tangent, but your question was basically what made me feel like I needed to try that out. I think it was a lot of just my parents, and also, myself too. Like, just, I think you go down that path to make sure that it's not the right one. And it's easy, you can get stuck in a path. That's the danger of going down a path, is that you can get stuck in it, get in the rat race, golden handcuffs. We talk about that a lot, but you can also go down it, realize it's not for you if you're checking in with yourself, and then go back all in the other way, which is what happened.
Yeah. I remember interviewing for the same company, and they had, like, front office, this big old sign that said, "Welcome, Ben Gottfredson." Do you remember?
Wait.
Yeah,
you interviewed the same company?
Yeah, I did.
I didn't know.
It was like,
I remember they made me a little sign, but
yeah, I just remember this big old sign, and like, yeah, he's starting next week. Anyways, that's just a little bit of a side note. So I think some context now. So if we can go back to that moment when you took the job and you were there for a week, and then you realize, okay, this is just, it's taking away. We talked about that last time. It's taking away from your company. So I think understanding a little bit maybe why people were questioning you, because maybe it's because of the way it started, because it was like a side gig, and maybe it was just side money, and you were, bootstrapping it. And maybe so it's like that context, they're coming in thinking, are you just doing this for fun? Like, are you really going to take care of a family by doing this? It's,
Yeah.
I could see a little bit of that because of the way you started. So maybe you should tell us how it started. And
Okay, so the moving company started through ironically, my grandma. So my mom's mom managed a rest home here in town. And what she found, her problem was that she couldn't really trust the movers. Like, she had these big companies that were kind of impersonal, like the nationwide van lines that, they're going to rip. They have so much overhead that in order for them to help Granny, they got to charge a lot, right?
Mhm.
It's just the way it is when you have big overhead. Then she had, local guys who were taking smoke breaks and, stealing Granny's china, weird stuff like that. So the options for movers were scarce, and sometimes they still are in a lot of communities. So she actually just asked my family if we would do it. So my dad, my mom's strong too, and me and my brothers, we would all pitch in. And that was how it started. Was we would just move furniture with a pickup truck, and we would make sometimes 2 loads with the pickup truck. It was just a dresser, bed, nightstand, and that was the origin. It then grew, and I really got to thank my dad for this,
Right.
because he wanted to teach me hard work. So he printed business cards, and they said Big Ben's moving. So
Your dad came up with the name?
yes.
Wow.
So he didn't.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So I actually wasn't interested in business. I was a kid, like a teenager.
Yeah.
And
In college.
No, this is before.
Oh, okay. Oh, this is even before. Okay.
Like when I was a kid, like I was 10 years old, 12 years old. We started these jobs, right?
Okay.
Then he didn't print the business cards till I was like maybe 17, 18, pre-mission though.
Okay, I did not realize that either. I didn't know you were doing move jobs before your mission.
Well, I wasn't even wanting to do it.
Yeah, it's hard work.
I was a kid. Like, I wanted to play basketball and
Football at best.
yeah, I wanted to play football and basketball. I wanted to go to the lake. I wanted to just have late nights and hang out. Like, work was a chore, right? Like, I learned hard work really through sports, because that's where I was competitive. I wanted to win. That's where I learned hard work. But when it came to actually making money, was not interested in money. It just wasn't even a big deal to me. And so, pretty much, I kind of, my dad printed those business cards, and that was enough of a nudge for me to kind of catch the spirit of it. And I think it's a good takeaway. I got to thank my dad, because he believed in me, and I don't know how far he saw it going, but he wanted to teach me hard work, and it's a big deal. So I think anyone who wants to start a business for their kids, you never know where it's going to end up, right? Teaching your kid to do that dog walking business, or that lawn care business, or that window washing business, like, it might start as like just a life lesson or a way that you can bond with your kid. Because even after my dad printed those Big Ben's moving business cards, he would still come help me. So like, my dad easily could have just started a moving company and just had me be his like top manager. He didn't do that. I don't know why. And I really owe him, that's why I try to take care of my parents, is because I owe them a lot. Right. So, I mean, credit to them, but at the same time, we just started getting bigger and bigger. Right. Then, after my mission was really when it went from, maybe like a once a month type of thing to like a every weekend, then every day, then, even the days I was in class, everyone else was handling my friends, you and Cooper and the gang.
I went on. I remember a couple of those. We would, move till midnight.
Yeah. Yes. So we were learning the school of hard knocks, but that's kind of the origin of how it turned from, starting with one little job at grandma's rest home through to where we kind of picked up in college.
You remember my analogy about, business like gangs, like drug lords?
Yeah.
It, organic. I mean, I think it has to be said or thought about how long it takes and how long it took you. I mean, there's ways to accelerate the process. If you have a lot of capital, you can accelerate, but like in this way, but based on your circumstances, you were able to have, really low. I'm thinking of Brandon Judd right now, because you remember exactly what Brandon Judd said about like the risk and the thing. And I think, when your experience, when you got a tech job after college and then quit, it has to be taken with the right context, meaning like you had been years, way before I even realized that you were starting to plant the seeds, word of mouth, build up the brand, build up your the company, your assets, and just slowly growing. How like you were pretty decently big enough, like you said, you were already making more with your moving company than you were at this job that you took. And that's, and then you made that jump, you made that switch out, like, okay, now my time, like when people start with a side hustle and then they try to build that up until they can't do both, and then they have to make the jump over, and then they kind of go, that's actually what you did. It wasn't like, hey, I'm going to quit my job today and then I'm going to start a business from scratch.
True. And maybe that's context that I've told the story so many times I forget to give. Yeah. One other side note I have to say, just where we're talking about my dad coming up with the name. A lot of times people size me up and they say, you're not that big. Like, yes, sir, I'm not that big. I don't want to tell the whole story about my dad came up with the name, but it's like, funny. I'm big enough to get the job done. Okay. Like, let's go.
There you go.
And now big is in our big store adventures. It's in everything.
Yeah. You use that for everything now.
Now we're trying to think big. We're not, but a lot of people think it's like a flex. Like, I think I'm big, but my dad came up with it.
And was it your size that he came up with that name?
I think it was just clever. I think he just had a ring to it. Sure. I was big. Like, I don't know. You tell me if I'm big or not. I think I'm medium sized, but yeah, I think it just had a ring to it, and he just was spitballing. That's part of the reason why.
That's fun to know that, like, your dad just came up with a name. It was like, a ring.
It was like off the top of
it. It wasn't head. Ben thinking that he was big.
No, which I think some people think.
No, that's exactly what people think. That you're Big Ben, that you're like
self-proclaimed Big
Ben.
No.
Yes, that you were big.
I'm Big Ben now. I kind of go by that.
Yes.
Like, a lot of people call me Big Ben. Yeah, it's over. It's done. It's how the book was written, but it wasn't my idea. You know what I mean?
That's so funny. Can we talk about that guy that's painting numbers on people's curbs? That's called Big Ben's.
Okay, yeah. There's
another Big Ben out there.
I don't know. Maybe he didn't know about me, but a lot of people hit me up. They're like, "Oh man, you're so industrious. You started that curb painting company because this guy will drop off flyers on people's doorsteps."
We still don't know who he is, right?
Well, he doesn't leave a phone number. It's a flyer that you fill out, you sign it, and then you put it back on your dumpster if you're willing to pay for his thing. He doesn't have an Instagram. He doesn't have a phone number. He doesn't have any contact info. So people all the time, they're like. And that's another reason why they think it's me, is because there's no contact info. So I'm not sure if he's trying to run off the name or if he honestly just came up with it on his own, but there is a Big Ben's curb painting company out there.
Big Ben's curb painting. If you're listening to this, or if you know him, whoever you are.
Yes, put us in touch.
Wherever you are, please reach out to us. We want to find out exactly who Big Ben's curb painting is. Like the mystery. I guess we could always fill out the form and...
I've thought about it.
Actually get the painting.
We probably should.
Then we can meet him.
Yeah. There's also a Big Ben's moving in California. Well, one thing is people use my good reputation all over the country. So they like in Chicago, there'll be like a move job and they'll try to trick these people into using them. And they'll be like, look up Big Ben's. And then they'll see my good reviews and then they'll trick them, bait them, and then they will do the move for them without any company, and then they'll leave me a bad review.
That's savage. Because they can get the work from a good review, and then if they do a bad job, you're the one who pays for it.
Correct. It's quite the scam. I mean,
sucks.
we have some bad reviews that were just like from our own customers, but about I'd say over half are from scams like that.
That sucks.
Which really stings.
Yeah.
There's also a California company, like these Chicago East Coast companies, they don't even have, there's no way to get a hold of them, but there's a California Big Ben's moving that is pretty rough. They're pretty bad too. And so sometimes people look us up and they find those guys. But anyways, the name has a lot of different shoot offs to it.
Yeah. Eventually you'll have to get into the whole, what is that, trademark?
Yeah, it's just not worth the money.
No.
I mean, really big. Someday maybe it will be.
Well, then what are you going to do? Sue them for using it?
Yeah.
You'd have to get a hold of them and find them, and they'd have to have assets to take. And
we found out recently how extensive some lawsuits aren't just worth chasing people down. It's just not worth it.
It's just something that when people go through, it's like the worst part of their lives.
Yeah. Some are, so don't screw me, but some aren't.
Yeah. Well, cool. I mean, yeah, so that's basically how you got started. You made the switch over and it just started to grow, right?
Yeah.
What were the biggest things like that you did to scale?
Biggest things to scale, I think the team matters, right? And also finding that fine line between training and holding people accountable, but also not micromanaging. It's a really important game you have to play.
Balance.
Right? Because if you are hands off completely and your team isn't held accountable, that causes problems. But if you're over the top or you micromanage, you're going to push away your team. So you're always trying to find people that you can trust when you're not around. And so sometimes you have to pay for that. So one of my big philosophies that we've talked about this before on the podcast is just maybe paying someone more than like the market would say you should. So you're not at that exact spot where supply meets demand.
Yeah.
But you're maybe a little bit above it. So it's really worth it though, because you're going to save on recruiting costs, training costs, like just going to save you some headaches. So I feel like that is a big deal. And that's our team is really what makes us different. I feel like I put a lot of, especially early on, I put a lot of myself out there. Like not only was I on every job when we first started, but I was also, working with people, referral sources, like directly, like, hey, let's figure out a way to get organic referrals. I didn't pick up SEO and other lead sources till later, but I think that's a big deal, is just getting out in the community, being willing to network, being a good networker, being someone that people can trust, because really when people refer you, you're building them value. When we have professionals that refer us, business to business referral, it makes them look good if we do good. And so I think just having a good service at the end of the day, that sounds simple, but that's a big thing too, is then delivering, because every business can be broken down into, finding, I was thinking missionary work terms, finding, teaching, and baptizing, right? Mm-hmm. It's like, you got to get the opportunities, then you got to crush it, you got to deliver, and then you have to, retain and have that good reputation after they're done with all the whole step, which in business is like finding, executing, and then retention for future and word spreading, right? So you got to have all three. I think at certain points in time, you get strong on some and weak on others, but a good business has all three all the time.
Yeah. No, I like that a lot. Something I've been thinking about is like money versus freedom. And we've had a couple people on the podcast, recently talking about that. I mean, the whole point of like this, like entrepreneurship, is to have a little bit more freedom. It can be argued that there is way less freedom starting a business and being an entrepreneur, being self-employed, that you're actually like, you can't just go clock out, but you're going to be on your phone at night or things like that. So maybe you could talk a little bit about that. Like, what are your thoughts on just the freedom of an entrepreneur versus, making really good money with a tech job?
Here's what feels good to me is that every action I do has a dollar tied to it or a reward tied to it. So like the downside, you talk about freedom, right? It's freedom from stuff you don't want to do, right? If you're in charge, if it's your business, if it's your baby, you're only going to take actions that bring in revenue or, maybe indirectly bring in revenue or the rest of your time is going to be spent doing things that you want to do. So I think a lot of people create a job. They don't start a business. They start a job, right? At first, I took every single call up until very recently, relatively recently. Even after I stepped out of the field, and I still like to do long distance jobs before I had my baby and everything. But I stepped out of the field except for those long distance jobs, and I was just on the phone all day, every day. Like I would go into an appointment, and then I would set aside 30 minutes for callbacks. Then in my next appointment, then 30 minutes for callbacks, right? And then hopefully I could catch some of them. So you really do have less freedom in some ways, but you have more freedom from the drudgery, right? Like you have more freedom from the things you don't want to do. Because if it's something you don't want to do, you can choose to delegate it out and just play to your strengths.
If you want to.
So like accounting, I never did any accounting. Like even when I was a very small business with not much revenue coming in, I had the right to outsource that. So Tanner's been with me from like day one. And so that's been such a blessing to me because in other jobs, there's certain roles that are really, they're what I call the drudgery zone. Like they're daunting, and you can outsource those and you don't have freedom from the calls, but I like the calls, it suits me. Right.
Yeah. I mean, accounting should be outsourced. Like, no doubt.
Yes.
I mean, if you're running a business, you do not have time to go and bookkeep and all that stuff. Like that should be outsourced all day.
But some people,
depending on your size,
some people that's what's keeping them from starting a business. Like my friend Haley, she is extremely smart. She has 2 master's degrees in math, and she's really good at tutoring, and she wanted to start her own tutoring business. And our conversation was basically like, she was, picking my brain. I'm like, wait, you're doing the accounting? Like that's a problem. And so I was like, you should just be tutoring, handling the setup, the actual tutoring, the delivery, training the other tutors that are going to be tutoring alongside you in your way of teaching. And that was like telling her that she didn't need to do the accounting, that it wasn't worth it, that someone could do it for cheap, at least while she's that small, and just grow with them. That was just the one tip she needed to get going.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember you telling me that. And it's like, it's crazy to think you'd be held up by that, be paralyzed by that. But people get paralyzed by a lot of weird things. Tons.
Yeah. It's not the only thing. Like there's lots of licensing and lots of like things that you really don't want to do that hold you up for a long time.
So actually one thing that came to my mind, we were talking about growth. What I've noticed is when you joined BNI, I feel like that was a catapult, into just a whole nother, and I could be wrong. I feel like when you started that, like you started really blowing up and taking off. Am I wrong with that?
No, you're right. That's kind of my secret sauce is BNI. I mean, some businesses it fits better than others, but I mean, that's the first thing I do when I have someone who wants to grow a business. I tell them, "Are you in BNI?" And if they're not, I say, you need to give it a shot. And this is not like a sponsored ad for BNI, but it's a way that you're going to be a better person if you're giving other people business and receiving business, right? So I've received hundreds of thousands from BNI, and I've passed millions. And so that, to me, that feels good because it's like I've passed $1 million plus worth of referrals to people that they've like their families have been provided for, and I've received too. And so it's a really big thing. Is I think there's other ways to network, but BNI is what worked for me pretty young. Yeah. My friend J.R. Martin, who had on the podcast, he took me to my first BNI. And it was really scary for me because it was like $1,000. And for me, $1,000 at the time was a huge percentage of what I had, you know what I mean? And so to make the leap, you know,
Make the investment.
it also does, like when you're first visiting, sometimes it feels like, oh man, like it's a lot. It was really, if I'm being totally honest, I actually got a referral from BNI just from visiting that paid for the membership.
Wow.
So just from going and visiting the chapters, shaking hands with people, passing out my business card, I got over $1,000 worth of referrals from visiting that I said, I can't really not do this anymore. I have no excuse.
Was it the rituals or chants that scared you?
Yeah, it was actually the blood handshake.
Now tell us all the drama about your chapter.
I drank the Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
So it is kind of a cult.
It would be fun if we could talk about all the drama, but we were not going to.
We can. That's what podcasting's for.
All the relationship dramas from networks. No, that's something I noticed. I think that's pretty powerful. Getting the nice networking group to help grow and just the concept in general. It's nice that they do that. You know, the group, then you can work together and you share with each other. But that's just something I thought, like, as far as like growing, it's been pretty powerful.
Yeah. And I mean, just one more thing on your point about freedom. I think you do get the freedom, right? Like, yes, it's not as free as you might imagine. Like, it's still work. You're always on the clock technically. But I remember a pivotal moment. We were talking about travel a little bit off air.
Yeah.
I mean, when I quit that job, the first thing I did was actually, yes, I made the decision I was going to double down, but I actually went to Thailand before I even started putting any work in, because my whole life this was the first time that I had the flexibility and the funds to do something like that, because my whole life I was playing football or going to school.
Yeah.
I didn't have enough free time where I could do that, right? And so
most will never ever get it.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. Going from high school, college to a career where you only get
1 week PTO.
Yeah. I mean, and they'll do that their entire life till they retire, and some don't even retire.
Yeah.
Which that was where I wanted to transition anyway. So I think we should transition to that, because I think, you can make good money in a job. And sometimes that is the right thing for that person.
Yeah.
I think one of the biggest elements, especially with today's group, is stress. So I think we want to avoid stress, and we don't want to we want the least amount of stress and responsibility. And so I think a lot of people will go that route to just avoid that, and for them, that's, I'm not saying that's wrong in any way. Like, some people, that's exactly what they need for their health, and that's what they want to do. But I think one of the biggest things, because you can make money and you can get a good corporate job, a tech sales job, and you can make a lot of money. You can make money starting your own business, but the element is just that freedom. And one of the things that you love spending, your time and your resources on is traveling. So tell us a little about that. I mean, maybe more about your Thailand or just travel in general. Like, what gets you so excited about traveling?
I think starting on the traveling piece, right? Like, for me,
Is it for the gram?
It's not for the gram, ironically. I actually don't post about my trips until long after they're over.
I'm joking when I say that, because I know that you don't travel for an Instagram post.
I know, but I do like to document, and I do like to share. Like, I'm actually like a little side passion project. I started a page called Bigger Bucket List, because I want to help people, like, basically look at things they could do, right? Things that are out there for them. And honestly, if you remember how I was in like high school, college before I did this trip to Thailand, I actually was the opposite, where I thought I was kind of closed-minded, and I would say, "Oh well, people think they need to go to people think they need to go somewhere exotic and post about it. Like I'm fine right here in southern Utah. Got the Red Mountain behind me and the best weather in the world.
The Ivan's Res,
The Ivan's
Ben
Res.
Smith's.
Yeah, Ben Smith's backyard. Like, why would I want to go anywhere else?" So I was really closed-minded about it, and I wouldn't even look into it. I didn't even know what was out there. It just sounded like something that wasn't interesting to me. But I did this first trip to Thailand, and
That was your first trip.
my first international
I didn't
trip.
realize that was your first one.
Yeah, it was a big one. It's a big one. And getting out there, everything was so fun. Scuba diving, elephants, cobras, some of these literally the most beautiful beach I've ever seen. Everything's cheap once you get there. Just a lot of culture and new stuff. And then I went to Brazil with Rory and Anna, and did some humanitarian work in Greece. Like, just
that.
like all these things that now looking back, I'm kind of addicted. And so I always have that to look forward to. I always have like a big international trip on the horizon. And we were talking about how I didn't get to go to Africa because of my daughter's health, but like that was fine. But like I always have something I'll book it a couple months out, so I have something to look forward to. And so really when I'm at home working, like I don't ever resent work. I don't ever resent waking up and putting my head down and doing something hard, because I know there's something around the corner, and I know that I won't be able to keep doing that if I don't keep
Working.
Yeah. So I always have in addition to my family and everything, all my other whys, I always have like a fun why too,
Well, it's motivating. I mean,
Yeah.
when you have something. And I think, it's like when you actually set a goal to buy something or to go travel somewhere, and then you start getting motivation from that goal, and you start working towards it, and it makes it a little bit easier to maybe work the second job or work the extra hours or whatever it may be, or work harder on your business, because you're like, no, I'm so excited for that. But sometimes if we don't have anything scheduled, if we don't have any goals that we're working towards, you kind of just go stagnant.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm a big guy about, there's always the raising income or budgeting. How do people, and the truth is you need both, but it also, travel motivates you to raise your income, but it also motivates you to cut back. Like,
Yes.
I don't spend money on frivolous stuff. I spend money on bucket list type stuff. So I think if I didn't have those bucket list things I wanted to do so bad, I only have a certain percent of my resources that I can give to fun stuff, right? The rest of it needs to be reinvested or saved or done something smart with, right? We have a lot of expenses, but I think putting my money and actually I have these international trips scheduled years in advance. Like they're on my calendar years in advance. And so it prevents me from taking that money that I could spend on those things and just spending it on dumb stuff too.
Well, what I think about with that is there is a limited number of resources, no matter, how much you make. Like you could get to the point in life where there's never enough, right?
Yeah.
I mean, even if you're making tons of money, you could still be like, there's so much to spend our resources on that we could get to that point where it's like you never have enough.
Yeah.
Have you ever felt that way before? Like, or how do you combat that where you keep yourself like both I'm growing in the future, but I'm happy with what I have?
Well, if I think I understand your question, like staying hungry versus staying content.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I think going back to, all the framework that was set up earlier with my business, I think there's just certain things I'm wired well for. Like entrepreneurship's one of those things.
Mm-hmm.
I think another thing that I would say is like a strength of mine is staying content and staying hungry. Like, I think of other like contemporaries, like other people in the same arena, like doing entrepreneurship in a big way. I think I'm, you know, I think I'm much happier than a lot of them. I don't know if that's too much of a brag, but I think I'm a competitor, right? And I think there's someone out there that has more money than me. There's someone out there that has, they're in better shape than I am. Yeah. But I don't know if there's anyone out there that's happier than I am, honestly. And I think it starts with my wife, honestly, my family. Like, I just have so much gratitude that I think I don't think I have my priorities out of whack. And so I can look at my wife and my daughter and my parents and my brothers and just say, like, I'm the winner. Like, it doesn't really matter if someone's in better shape or someone has more money or more extravagant life. Like, my heart is just full and I feel like I keep that in my day-to-day mindset, that I don't think there's anyone else out there that's happier than I am because of those people in my life. Like, take it another step. Look at our friend group. Like, I'm not going to list them all off, but we've gotten told from other people, like, no one stays friends like you guys do. Like, my group of best friends, people just don't do that. Like, we like to get together, have friends trips, stay connected. And I think I win at life in the friends department too. Mm-hmm. So when you have when you put people first, then money just becomes
a tool.
It becomes where it should be. It's like, you hear about, obviously money does buy happiness, right? That's a whole nother tangent. Money does buy you happiness, but it can't buy you joy. I don't know if that even makes sense. Money is secondary, right? So if you really believe in your heart, my life, I'm winning life because of the people around me, and you have your priorities straight, then I think it puts the pressure off too in money, right? So even if we went broke, like if we went belly up somehow, I think I could look around and still think of myself as winning life. Does that make sense?
Well, it makes sense. And you actually asked yourself a question I was going to, that statement you said, if you were to lose everything today, gone.
Yeah.
How would things change? And from your comment, it's like, I don't know if there would be certain things that would change for sure. But what you're saying, like, when you're focused, your happiness around your family, like your parents, your brothers, your wife, your baby, like, that's what brings you joy. That's what brings you the most happiness. And you do all these other things to be able to create those memories and to fuel, to boost, some of those experiences. But something that's been on my mind too, and you ended up getting there. I've been thinking a lot about gratitude.
Yeah.
We've had a few people talk about it on the podcast, but Maddie and I, we had a conversation the other day about it, but I'm like, what's the antidote to, like, most of our problems in life, like our third world problems that we deal with on a day-to-day basis? And what came to my mind, like, what I felt impressed was, like, gratitude. Like, when you start feeling grateful for where you're at and feeling grateful for your circumstances and grateful for your family and grateful for your country, grateful for, like, that, it's such a powerful, powerful exercise to just be grateful for what you have and focusing on those things that matter most as well and being grateful for that.
Well, gratitude is just perspective. For me, they're super connected, because I think a lot of people,
That's a really good way to put it.
When they hear gratitude, I think they think of, and this is important to do this too, like, they think of just, like, listing out all the things they're grateful for and just trying to remind themselves of what they're grateful for. I think that's a big, that's a big component of gratitude, is just reminding yourself what you're grateful for. But I think gratitude starts with your outlook, right? Like, gratitude is more than just being thankful. It's a knowledge and an understanding of what's important in life. Because if you have an understanding of what's important and what's going to last, right? Like, Tim McGraw came up with a new song, Standing Room Only. He's like, you know, this is the point of the song is like, I don't care what happens in my life as long as at my funeral there's standing room only because I was a good person.
Wow.
Right? That's his song. It just dropped yesterday.
I haven't heard it.
It's fresh. So we'll put that in the background on the reels. Yeah. But the point is like, if you have that knowledge, you can still be hungry and you could still want more and chase more. And you don't have to always just be like, you know, you should be always counting your blessings all the time, writing down what you're grateful for. But you don't always have to stay there because you have that perspective of like, I know what's important and I know I have that gratitude in my heart. So then you can go be hungry and chase more because you're coming from a place of having the big vision, the big picture.
Yeah. No, I love that insight. And also what came to my mind is Luke Combs, his song "Doing This."
Yeah,
have you heard that one?
Good one.
That song gives me chills. Like I don't know if he wrote that. Like there's just some true heart and soul into that song. Like someone asking him, "What would you be doing if you weren't doing this?" And he's like, "If you weren't on the big stage and you didn't have all the money and all that," he's like, "I'd be on a stage doing this. Like this is who I am. This is what I'd be doing. This is what he loves." You know, and I love that song so much because it's like, here's a guy so passionate that even if he wasn't famous and had all this money, he'd be still singing songs, you know, and in the bar down the street.
Dude, isn't it funny how country music, if you're a fan and you can, like, I don't know, some people hate it, but we love it. And country music really has every single TED Talk out there. Like what I just said about
standing room only.
Well, no, what I said about how I'm a winner because of my wife at the end of the day. That's why I'm a winner. I'm not a winner because of the storage units or the moving company or the trip to Thailand. I'm a winner because of my wife. There's country songs like Cody Johnson. He has this song called, his song's called Lucky. He's like, you could hit the lottery. You could be in the NFL. You could hit a straight flush on the flop. You know, he's listing off all these reasons why other people could be lucky. But he's basically saying, like, because of my girl, I'm the lucky one. I would rather have what I have than what you have, you know. So it's a little corny, admittedly. But a lot of those life lessons that we bring up, and lots of people read a book to learn, or they learn it in a TED Talk, or they have to remind themselves. It's like, I don't know. I feel like sometimes in country music we get it in a lot simpler way.
Yeah, we do.
I don't know.
What's the song?
Corny, but
no, it's good. What came to my mind is the song where you're like, I don't need to see the Eiffel Tower. I don't need to see the world. Like I got you, and that's it. We're good. Like I'm happy. Like I don't need all these other things.
I could die a happy man. Yeah. Thomas Rhett. Don't quiz me, dude. I'll know him.
They're really amazing principles. It makes me think of Dr. Chris Brown's analogy of the fisherman who hires, and, you know, you hire someone to start a big old fishing business. And then once you got the whole empire in place, you start fishing.
Yes. We talked about that last week. And for those that skip to this episode or don't remember, basically the analogy is this, you know, American comes up to this guy who's in a small fishing village, and he asks him, you know, he starts engaging conversation. He's like, okay, so you're just a fisher, just fish with one pole. That's all you do. And you just come here and fish every day. And he's like, yeah, that's all I do. And he's like, well, I think what we could do is we could build a business, and then we'll buy boats, and you'll hire other fishers, and then we'll build an empire. And then you can retire and do whatever you want. And he's like, yeah, I would be right here on this shore fishing. That's what I love to do.
If you could build it up and retire.
Yeah, if I could retire, I'd just be fishing. And so...
Was it an American in the story, really?
I don't know. we poke holes in that because here's what I want to... Here's the hole I want to poke today, is that the least happy... Let's say there's 3 guys, right? The least happy guy is the guy that builds the business and is miserable. Right? Like if that guy were to listen to that guy who came up to him and say, okay, I'll listen to you. And then he goes and does it, and he's miserable along the way because he doesn't find joy in it. right? That guy is the miserable one. Then the next best scenario is if you're that guy who just stays on the shore and just stays happy and just keeps casting one pole, one reel, keeps catching a couple fish a day and just call it a humble life, right? But is there another third scenario where that guy could stick to his roots, remember his why, still find joy, and still do the industrious thing at the same time? I think that's who the guy you want to be. That's the life, is building things and sticking with your roots. Does that make sense?
No, it does. And for whatever reason, it's thought you can't have, that there's only one or the other. There's not a third guy. Why does everyone think that?
Not everyone does think that. That's why when I hear that, it puts your priorities in line, right? Because he's saying that his priority is his happiness, which is the right priority. But I think a lot of times there's guilt with industry too. Like we've talked about how there's guilt with money, there's guilt with industry, and there doesn't have to be. You can, it doesn't always have to be like, when is enough enough? It can be like, no, like we're enjoying the journey. Like we've been happy. And that's why we talk about pacing yourself through the whole thing, right? Pacing yourself, taking those moments to go have an experience all along the way.
Yeah, I think Justin Prince, he talked about that on the podcast, like how you can have both. You can have a religious life, a life of God, and you can have, I suppose he has fame and fortune.
Yeah, he's a great example because he will post, and Bridger Pennington's another good one.
Yeah, Bridger's awesome.
They're posting gospel stuff, and it's natural. Like they're just showing
it's
the world
who they are.
Exactly.
You don't need to be different. You just be who you are.
Exactly. They're not being politically correct, like posting about God.
Well, but
they're showing
anything about religion.
They're showing who they are.
Do you think it's possible? Like I was listening to, I don't want to digress too much, but like one of the Come Follow Me's, and like studying a little bit about Jesus, and there's like just, ego and putting yourself in a position, and it's almost like it'd be hard to, trying to get fame and other things, like when you're trying to promote yourself, to like not follow this one teaching that I was, reading about. And so I wonder if, do you have any thoughts on that? Like being a man of God, which might avoid completely ego and anything about yourself. Like it's always someone above you. You don't ever bring attention, or you don't bring attention to yourself. It's always focused out on other people. And Jesus always would turn away his attention. It's not me, it's the Father. It's the Father.
Yeah. I think it's a tightrope act, honestly, because I see both sides of it, right? And here's what we're learning about reach, right? Like if you don't have a tribe or people that like, everyone has a network that they can impact, no matter how small or big. But look at what Bridger's doing, for example. Bridger he literally has
leading the charge in
funds. He's leading the charge in funds, but he takes time. And I don't know if you watched it, you don't get on social media as much as I do, but I watched his entire story, and he was literally teaching from the scriptures it was only like 5 minutes, but he taught a full gospel lesson. So I think he's a good example of like how you bring attention to yourself in a good way, and then you go ahead and turn the attention to the Lord because of the attention you get. I think I would not be comfortable being one of those, really, if you have to get too in people's face in a way that's over aggressive, like I'm fine to get in people's face every once in a while, right? And I'm happy to do it. And it's just like Christ turned the tables in the temple, right? Mm-hmm. But if you're one of those people that never says a kind word or never stops down, takes time to be mild or humble, I think that is where you could get off track. And, that's where anti-Mormon people latch onto. They latch onto those people that, oh, this guy's like a member of your church, but he's trying to be over the top aggressive. And anyways, I digress, but no one's perfect, and I'm fine if you have to push. I'd rather you get out of your shell and try to have a reach and an audience and try to do something big and maybe, overstep and then pull back than never figure out how far you could go. Does that make sense?
Well, it does, because there's a, like you said, it's a fine line.
Yes.
And I think back to like missionary work and service in general.
Yeah.
Because what do they ask you when you get out into the field? They ask you to have courage. They ask you to open your mouth.
Yeah.
Right? To open your mouth and to share and to talk. And they actually want people with influence to be able to share and be a light to everyone around. And the other thing I love and respect, I think about a lot, like, because we play with this mindset. I think sometimes we think a lot about, well, I don't want to pursue prestigious things, or being able to make good money or whatever it may be, because you don't want to lose, like, you might think that, like, following the gospel or your soul, you don't want to go down a route that you would lose those things that are important to you. But you look at someone like the apostles in a church, they're all like extremely prestigious and very, very successful. Like every single one of them, they're like top of the top. And
yeah, and people now, like, they're top of the top, but people now think of them as an apostle first, even though they have prestigious careers and backgrounds.
Yeah. But it was like, what I mean is, like, it's okay. Like, they did very successful things, but they're still men of God.
Yes, absolutely.
So, and that might be okay. I mean, I didn't mean to go on that tangent, but I think about those things sometimes.
No, it's important. I mean, one thing that we do want to emphasize on this podcast is that we're devout, right? Like, me and you, we both are believers. Mm-hmm. And I think it's important for people to understand that it's not a prerequisite. Like, we had Cody Adent on last week. He's like, yeah, it's not my thing. That was fine. We have a ranging view of people, but if they really want to know the true us, mm-hmm. we're believers. Yeah.
Very religious.
Yeah. We're not perfect. We're not gonna claim to know everything or be better than anyone. But I think one thing that qualifies us to talk about God is that we believe, and we really buy into the gospel, and we buy into what it's going to do for our families, and we buy into that in the next life, there is something waiting for us, and this life is the time to stretch and grow ourselves spiritually, as well as in these other ways, like, mentally, emotionally, financially, that we talk about on the podcast.
Yeah. I mean, one of the biggest lessons I learned, serving in my mission, was just the love for people and where everybody is at. Like, everyone has different beliefs and there are different places in their life. But, like, when you truly start to, like, feel love for mankind and just people, then you don't worry about those things. You don't worry about where they're at, and even sometimes decisions that people make that are bad decisions, relatively speaking, I suppose. But yeah. You still like love those people, and like, I wouldn't ever, because my religious belief is different from somebody, I would never not care about that person because of that,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you on your mission, you do gain a big love for people, and that's
no matter where they're at and
yes,
their beliefs.
You learn to be open-minded too. Yes. I think a lot of people think the opposite, but you learn to be, you get your eyes open to how life really goes, and I think you learn a lot of compassion. And I know for me, probably a lot of my success in business is from the soft skills I learned on my mission. Like chapter 10, Preach My Gospel, listening, asking good questions, explaining things clearly. It's super simple. And you learn how to basically, something you believe in, you learn how to help someone else take over too and buy in. On that same tangent, I think I already said this, but like it's okay not to be perfect and still believe in the gospel. I think we're still going to tell the occasional dirty joke, but we still buy into the gospel.
Yeah,
That's the end
still
of the day.
believe.
You know what I mean? Like we're not going to, just because we're not perfect, we're not going to shy away from what we know to be true.
Yeah,
And
I
what
agree.
what has given us so much success. I feel like a lot of people shy away from the gospel or sharing the gospel in the spotlight because they feel insecure about their mistakes or the things about them that aren't perfect. You know, like thinking a thought like, oh, well, I don't want to share the gospel because I know that someone knows about this certain thing I did. It's like, that's in the past. If they want to think that, go ahead. But there's someone else that might need to hear you share what you believe today.
Yeah, I literally heard this that very point on the Follow Him podcast this morning or yesterday, and it was just people not, coming to Christ or going into service because they feel like the mistakes they've made don't qualify for them for that.
Yeah.
And it's not true. Those mistakes we've made. Yeah, I think that's a really cool conversation.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's true.
No, it's definitely true. And so would you give up everything? Would you be willing to give up everything for if you had to?
Yeah. I mean, but I don't have to. I mean, going back, you're like, I've run through that scenario. You're like, what would you do if you lost everything is basically your question.
Yeah.
I think, honestly, it would be harder on my wife than it would on me. If I'm being totally honest, because I don't know. I don't need much material things. Like, what would happen if we lost everything is we would sell our house and there's a casita in the storage facility we'd move into. You know what I mean? For real though. Like if we hit bad times, that's different than losing everything. I get it. But like, yeah, I think it would be discouraging, but I've done hard things. I know I can get back up. And I think that's a really big reoccurring theme is a lot of the guests we bring on have lost everything.
Yeah.
The odds are that a lot of people will, right? And I think it's okay. I think it's hopefully we learn from their mistakes, but I mean, I hope we don't ever lose everything, but I know that we'll be fine.
Well, that's actually reminds me of something that I wanted to touch up on a little bit. I mean, we learn so much more from mistakes than we do anything else.
Yeah.
And I think that's, really important. Sometimes we don't talk about them because most of the time those mistakes are very personal. And so we don't really want to go in and like say, okay, yeah, this is what happened. This is how I messed up, especially like on a podcast or anything like that. But I think, you mentioned for the call from Paul and just like taking a step back and thinking you could take 10 steps from one mistake whereas like, one at a time, it would have taken you forever. In just one mistake, you're that much further because you learn so much more.
Yeah.
When you make mistakes, and it's just part of life, like part of the journey.
Even small mistakes within a success. Like my first storage facility in St. George was a big success, but there's small mistakes within it I can take and learn and improve on our next ones. Obviously you can take. There's lots of little mistakes within a big mistake too.
Yes.
But that's basically what Paul said is he's like, look, lots of times you don't learn something if something goes completely right.
Yes.
But you guys having the chance to, even if things are okay, but we hit hurdles and we just learn, it's like that's the real time action. And that's why desperation and facing failure and mitigating mistakes pushes people to learn so much.
Mm-hmm. That's why I like talking to people that have been through 08. And some people will vet.
You love it. I can tell when someone's like, oh, well, in 08 and 09, Callan's like, I can't wait to hear what you're going to say because I don't know, you're just fascinated with that period of time.
Yeah, it was one of the scariest times. It was.
Yeah, I know.
But like,
I don't remember, but you were paying attention.
Yeah, well, people, like, I've heard, people will vet you depending on whether, like, AJ Osborne. And I want to talk about storage because You
Yes.
mentioned like if you lost everything, like, well, it'd be fine. I would just move into my storage facility. And that's something that we really should talk about.
Yeah.
And why you're so passionate about storage and how powerful that statement is. Because it makes me think about AJ, and his story is so powerful because, you know, when AJ got sick and he could no longer sell insurance, he had storage facilities keeping his family afloat. And that's why he's so passionate about sharing, you know, everything about storage and about the industry. And so I want to talk about that. And now I even forgot what I was going to say before. So
I think you were talking about storage.
'08, the lessons from '08 and all
yeah,
that.
okay.
But I know, like AJ's mentioned, he'll be like, when partners want to go to him, he's like, I survived '08. You know, I've been through it. And that's like
It's like I was in Nam.
yeah.
Basically.
Well,
It's like I have that badge.
everyone, all the businesses and business owners that survived through that time, they like that's a huge deal. So they're gonna look at you and like, have you ever been through anything hard? Has your business ever been through a downturn? Do you really know what it's like?
Yeah.
That's why, because like if you don't, it's like that perspective thing that we were talking about. You mentioned perspective. I thought it was really cool, like gratitude and perspective, separating those two but thinking them as the same.
Yeah.
But that's why it's so important, because you hear all the time like well, anyone can win when everyone's winning the last 10 years. It was such a boom
19
time
to 21, yeah.
such a boom time that like everyone's winning, like, but it takes someone who has survived through a hard time to know that they are the, you know, the cream of the crop. And that's the same thing that who did I mentioned this before that came on that did a program, the Robert Kiyosaki's investment guy.
Oh, Tom Burns?
No, Ken McElroy.
Ken McElroy, yeah.
So Ken McElroy, it was a call. I did a call with Ken McElroy. It was with a big group. It wasn't a one-on-one. But with Ken McElroy.
I got Ken on speed dial.
not even close. I did meet him, though, in person in Coeur d'Alene.
You touch him?
I shook his hand, yeah.
Oh,
so,
congrats.
yeah, I did touch him. So, anyways, but Ken McElroy is like, hey, I make sound investment decisions. I analyze a deal, I crunch the numbers, and I say, okay, you know, we're going to get these guys a 7% return here. We're going to do this, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, and I stick to that. Just because he's like, and I say, this is worth $5 million. I put my offer in for or $30 million. That's what he said. The example is $30 million. He's like, just because someone comes in and offers $5 million more doesn't mean that, like, I missed something. He's like, I have the same information as that guy.
Yeah.
And just because he feels like, you know, he's going to come in at $5 million more, he's like, I can't. I have to stick to my principles. And when we have a crash like '08, this is what Ken said. We have a crash like '08, we'll see who the experienced ones are.
I'll see that guy with his pants down.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. When the water goes out, you can see who's been swimming naked.
Yeah.
That's the saying, right?
Oh, yeah.
When it's low tide, when it's high tide, everyone looks good.
Yes.
Because they all have the water. When it's low tide, you can see who's been swimming naked. That's basically the idea.
Yeah. And that's why I bring it up, because, I mean, your family, your dad was in medical industry. So you didn't, everyone
He
that was in
sheltered a
construction.
little.
Yes. Yeah. Everyone in housing during '08 was like, man, I wish I was a doctor. I wish I went into medical.
Yeah.
And everyone in medical is like, dude, we're living the best life. Like, we're the best.
I think he was building that house.
Your dad?
So I don't know. I think it was, I'll have to ask him when we go back.
I just remember like an iconic moment when Bart Smith is a big builder.
Yes.
Like help do Entrada.
Yes.
Split Rock.
Yeah. I saw his last parade homes. His 2 homes were like the most pimped out homes.
Very, very successful person. And
yeah, he's a role model. We should have him on.
Yeah, Bart would be awesome. And
Yeah,
Scott. But they so successful. And he lived across the street from Dr. Perry. And I just remember like during '08, because we would go to breakfast in the mornings, and Bart's just like, man, I should have gone to medical school. But then he caught himself. He's like, man, I wish I would have gone to medical school, because nothing's changing for the doctor across the street. He's really, really had to like
markets impact.
They had to scale back. You know, he was using his savings to. I mean, I don't want to tell his story. I don't know even if I have permission, but he was like, he was taking care of his people. Like he was using the savings to keep everything afloat.
Yes.
Bart would have retired the next year. He would have literally retired.
Wow.
Had we not had the crash. But he caught himself. He said, but I love building homes.
Yeah.
And he's like, I picked what I wanted to do. Like, I love building homes. Like, and that was like, on one hand, you're like, oh man, yeah. And then he's like, oh, well, he loved doing that. He's passionate about it and everything's fine now. I mean,
Yeah.
all those guys are still.
Well, we had someone who just on that same note, we had someone who wanted to do a storage deal with us, and they had doing very well through the last couple of years. And then this last little recession has hit, and they made the same decision that it sounds like Bart had to make. And they said, no, we're not going to make the investment. We're going to take care of our people. So they're basically floating their staff, their team, until things get better. So it's a very, very cool move to try to float your people because you believe in them so much versus laying them off.
Yeah. And, you know,
not that there's shame in laying people off, but if you can keep them, it's great.
Yeah. And there's got to be some strategic decision to that. I mean, I asked that same question to David in our podcast, and David was like, his advice, because remember how I asked him, like, hey, what's your advice?
Now.
And David's like, my advice, writing's on the wall, cut it.
Yeah, he said,
don't float them.
He's like, lay people off right away.
Yeah.
So, David, we love you, man. I think that was the right call. That's what I would do.
No, I mean, that's the mistake he made during that housing crisis when no one needed concrete, was trying to drag it out.
Yeah.
And bleed when it, like, because he said it was either this month or we could have waited 10 months to literally pull the plug.
Sure.
But that's where I'm saying, like, it's really wise of him to say it strategically do something like that. And I'm not know their situation. And I do know that, you know, Bart, they did have to lay a lot of people off.
Right.
They did have to really thin at that time, which is a sucky time for everybody. I mean, there's no one wants to have to go through that. I think about it a lot because, again, it goes back to the impact of some mistakes and the lessons people learn, because you learn more from that than you will from 10 years of high tide.
Yes.
And I love to hear what people's experiences, because we're going to be coming to a new generation that hasn't gone through something like that. And, you know, we avoided a big recession with all the stimulus money that got dumped in during COVID. Yeah. Now we're affected by inflation.
Yes.
But we literally, to avoid having, like, the economy crash, which it would have horribly. Yeah. We dumped so much money into the economy to prevent that, because no one wants to go through that again. And anyways, I don't know. I'm not an economist, but the recession that's coming might not have been as bad if we wouldn't have done that. Well, I mean, if you prolong, I've heard that same thing. Again, I don't have any authority to speak on this, but it's like, I heard that same thing. Like, we're pushing it down the can down the road. If we let people suffer, then they wouldn't have to suffer later. I don't know. Yeah. Well, and then it's like, yeah, it's just going to be even bigger and bigger if we do have a. That's not even to get started on how our grandkids are going to have to pay for all our debts. Yeah, it's not getting the Social Security. I don't know anything about that. We should have a politician on. Maybe they could do that. We will. We'll have to. But you brought up storage. Yeah, let's go into storage, and because I think that's what's so powerful. You know, the idea that you have these storage facilities to rely on, and that's as a recession resilient asset, something that could, you know, people will probably need in all times. So let's hear your thoughts on storage. Well, it started because it's such a good sister company with my moving company, right? So I had good experiences with real estate. You know, I think I've said on here before, I like the frat house model, where you just fill, you know, like I have 9 guys in a house in Orem, and it's really good compared to just renting out a single family house. Mm-hmm. But it's nowhere near what a storage facility does, right? And so that journey of that first storage facility was like pretty grueling, because we went bank to bank to bank and just got rejected over and over and over. Finally, Jory, you know, the third banker at the same bank, after I went to every bank in town and I went to 2 people at his bank, he was the third one, and he finally said, okay, fine. Because the other ones were like, let's wait for another couple years, buddy. Like, you're only 24.
You know what I mean? Like, you're 25, you're 24. I forget, the month it was. I think it was 24 when I first dreamed it, and then 25 when I was like seriously hatching it, And so, like, yeah, you don't really have enough financials. We only have like one year of like good financials from you. So sorry, like, we'll talk to you later. And, like, pat you on your head. But I was like, no, like, I'm not waiting a couple more years. This is the next dream, right? And then just the whole experience was up and downs, right? Like, everything just fast learning. You learn all about how there's all the building costs, the architect costs, but having it work so well with that inexperience, and then taking all the lessons I learned, now we're leased up, we're very profitable, we're doing great. It's a perfect, we have a huge value add because of the moving company, that we get leads and our customers feel like they're getting a better value because they have their moving and storage is handled by the same group.
Yeah.
And we do a good job on both. Our storage units are nice, and our moving company, our service is great too. So we really do have a big advantage. And then making the decision of, I think I had this epiphany change where it went from partners are scary, partners are bad, I don't want to partner with anyone because they could have a piece of my pie, to more of an abundance mindset of like, oh, we could both benefit. We could grow the pie. Who cares if I have to give up most of the pie, as long as I can put money into these assets and help other people get wealthy. And we can also use our moving company to help them, but also we have a piece of the same pie. It just makes sense, right? And so we decided that instead of doing one deal every couple of years, we were going to do syndications where we were going to invite people to come along for the journey. And it's been awesome, honestly. Like, this work that we're doing feels like I've been doing it for a long time, but and I bet you feel the same way. Like, don't you feel like you've been doing this for a little while now? I mean,
I do.
Like, it's what we eat, sleep, breathe every single day is storage investments, but we're really so young into it.
Yeah.
And we've learned so much in such a short amount of time, just from going through this vetting process and training process. And we've paid for some really good coaching, and we have the network that I feel like we're onto something really big with Big Storage Ventures. And it's another thing to be grateful for, that I found this asset class, that we have an infrastructure to squeeze as much profitability out of it as we can, and it's really exciting to work with your best friend too, as like a little cherry on top, so
Cherry.
you're like cherry.
It's funny, the action with it. Yeah. I mean, one thing that I love about storage and that gets me excited about it is, and I don't know if you've talked about this before, but it's just that group of people. And maybe you could speak about that. Like, you've said it, I'll let you say it again, but maybe it was just a one-on-one, but it's like you get like just a good down-to-earth group of people, because everyone that I meet, like all the people that are trying to get into storage, guess what everyone has in common? And like when I sat down, like with, when I talked to everyone in AJ's group at Cedar Creek's thing, everyone, they start in a table. It's like, why are you here? Like, why are you getting into storage and stuff like that? And every single one of them, guess what it comes down to? Freedom.
Yeah.
Every one of them talks about freedom. The only reason why they're getting into storage is because they want to have more freedom. They want to be able to have that financial freedom. They want to be able to develop like that passive income, and they're choosing storage as their leg. They're having to do it. There's reasons why.
Yeah.
They choose that, but it's so cool. It's so powerful, because a lot of them, they're not like most of the people. Not all of them are like they're crazy rich or just, all out there. It's just like, we just want to have some financial freedom. That's why we're getting into storage.
And I think you find that because storage is not get rich quick scheme. It's not flashy. It's not sexy. Storage is solid. Storage is going to weather hard times as long as it's set up right, but it's not going to be Bitcoin. It's not going to, and I think you see a lot of those people that are interested in it because they understand it. They understand that this is going to be a way for me to passively build wealth, right? And that's really our product, that our service, however you want to put it, that we provide at Big Storage Ventures, is we make it, not only storage is generally passive, even for the person overseeing everything, but we make it completely passive for our partners. So we just use our economies of scale to manage everything. But people are attracted to storage for the freedom. And I think a lot of people have their priorities straight, because I think if other people were chasing some pie in the sky, they'd be at a Bitcoin conference, or at a, not that there's anything wrong with Bitcoin, but it's just the ceiling is so much higher with some of these more fringe investments. But you're protected in a storage asset against a lot of the other things that threaten other asset classes and investments. And so I think people really like that, because they have a really high ceiling, but they're reducing their risk.
Yeah. Well, for those same reasons, I love storage, and I'm excited about it too. Like, I get one thing, I mean, this is a question before, like, with what we're doing in trying to find deals and storage, what I get excited about is helping someone make a lot of money. Like, I want to find a deal that is just going to make everyone great returns.
Win. Yeah, seriously.
No, and that's what I get, like, when I call my aunt up and say, guys, like, I got an opportunity for you that's just going to be so awesome. Like, that's what I am motivated about. Like, I want to find good deals for people. I want people to make a lot of money.
Yeah.
But again, one thing to keep in mind, like with storage, is, like you said, it is like, it's slower. It's not like you're going to get rich quick. Like, it's a slower paced thing. I mean, it comes over time. Sometimes it takes a couple of years to even like build or lease up a facility, or
Correct.
flip a facility. And that makes me think about like patience, and the delayed gratification. We've talked about that on the pod a lot. And I think it's a really powerful, like lesson, delayed gratification. Mitch Matthews, he talked about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think about that. The study with the kids, those that could wait on the marshmallow, like, they're just so much more successful. But there's so many things in life that involve delayed gratification, like even just personal finance, like saving money every single month, and putting money away into retirement, or saving money and putting money away into a storage facility, which is retirement.
Yeah.
I was thinking like an IRA versus like storage, but being able to be disciplined. And you also mentioned that, today with your money, like being disciplined with your money so you can use your resources for certain places. It's such a powerful concept. But I think kind of just going back with storage, I really do get excited about the asset class and hopefully be able to create some passive income, for people.
Absolutely.
And to be able to develop the same. Like, that's the number one thing. Like, my biggest thing is freedom. That's what I have been seeking after for all these years. Like, I've been keep on craving more freedom.
Right.
And I think that's what everyone wants. But that's what I want. Like, I just want to be able to have, I think I'm a little bit of a workaholic, kind of. Like,
I would say so.
I do work a lot, and, I depends on what I'm into. Like, when I was in school, I was just putting hours down in school, but now it's like I do bookkeeping on the side. So I have a couple bookkeeping clients. So it's like
Billy Rubin on the side.
Oh my gosh. Like, when I was released, I finally became free of like schooling. I just filled it with something else.
I know.
Like, what is wrong with me?
I was going to say the same thing. Like, this structure we have with you at Big Storage Ventures has is it fair to say, a lot more freedom than any other thing you've had in the past? I mean,
yeah, in the past, for sure.
So, but there's a lot more gaps in your schedule, or there's more PTO, like, we'll say that way. Like, you just filled it with these Billy Rubin business, accounting business.
That stuff's all at night.
Yeah.
So that's like my day to day.
Anyways.
I don't know why I'm.
But it's true. I mean, it's your strength and your weakness, right? Yeah. But that's why it's so, we need to do a deep dive on you. I don't think we're going to have time today, but that's why it's so fun for me to work with you, is because I'll say this. I'll just while we're on it, I'll say this as the first reason. Like, you do have that. Like I want to say workaholic too, but I want to say just more like you're a self starter. Like you do have your motivation comes from within to just put your best foot forward. Why do you feel like that was the case? Like
Where did it come from?
Yeah, what in you, have you always been that way, or is that something you saw come out as you were a teenager, or what can you say to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing that comes to my mind is something like very pivotal is, I want to say, like my mission that I served for the church. But I guess it comes kind of back to like the gospel. So the principles of just those good principles to live by, like having integrity and honesty and self-motivation. Like I learned those from Jesus, basically.
Yeah.
Like as I'm coming closer to Savior, like, but that mostly came into practice when I was serving on my mission, because you get let loose, on your own, and you make a choice whether like no one else is watching, except, I mean, your companion might be watching, but like you're responsible, you and to God, for doing the work that you were called to do. And so are you gonna cheat the time? Like, are you gonna fluff the clock when you're out there? And I was crazy. I was like way over the top, I admit, if any of my people for my mission. But like I just developed a deep discipline for that, and a desire to just like get things done when no one's asking. And
that's what makes it so fun to be a team member, is some people that I work with, not really right now, but I'm just thinking in the past, like we talked about the balance between micromanaging and just being hands off.
Yeah.
No one likes to be micromanaged. No one likes to micromanage. And sometimes for me, I don't have time, right? So that's why this made sense just from my perspective, is because, you're a self-starter. You have that work ethic in you. It's not something that you have to be told what to do. And also your loyalty, right? Like that is something that, like, I think you've said it's maybe to a fault sometimes, but I think it's mostly a strength. I think that's why it's so awesome to have you on the Big Storage Ventures team and be your partner and be on Net Worth. And it's not something that every friend has, is those two things. And so to have your friend have those qualities, feel comfortable enough to bring them in-house, that's why it's a pleasure to work with you.
I appreciate that.
Thank you. This is, I was just thinking the same thing, but like we talked about what kind of person would you want your daughter to date earlier?
Oh yeah.
That's the qualities you look for.
Right.
The same qualities you look for in a business partner are the same kind of qualities you're going to want someone to date your daughter in. Yeah.
Well, I, to that, just quick side note, something that a philosophy, I don't know if this is wrong and I could get torn up about this or whatever, but like when I was dating, when I was like trying to date someone to marry, I didn't want to go buy like a fancy car. I didn't want to I didn't want money to be the reason someone was dating me, basically. Yeah. Like I wanted someone to pick me for who I am, and for me to pick them for who they are, and for us, the foundation of the relationship to not be based on like all the fun stuff or all that other stuff. And anyways,
that's a big one, because I think there's a lot of benefits to getting married later. Like me and Lauren
there's tons. You could have a career established. You could literally save so much money if you waited to get married.
But I think one thing that helps is that we dated before the business came, right? Like
you and Lauren.
Yeah, we were dating in college, right?
Right.
And so I think, that's definitely a benefit to getting married young, even though there's a lot of downsides to it, is that, like if you're still in college or young and you don't have everything yet, it's a really big, that's a big telltale sign about who you're marrying, is that they don't care about that kind of thing. Like they're willing to ride with you no matter what happens.
Yeah, it's funny that perspective you have, and you mentioned that in Uncle Rob's episode. That you met someone who's getting married later in their life that has tons of money.
The prenup.
Yeah, and so he's actually legitimately worried. And it's funny because when you mentioned that, like the thought that I just talked about,
Yeah.
that like you would wonder, is someone going to marry you for who you are versus all your money?
Yes.
And that guy that you mentioned last week, that's what he was concerned about. That's why he wanted a prenup.
Yes, and he was telling younger guys to get prenup.
Even before they
had money. They already had money, but they're just like young entrepreneurs.
He told everyone like he was just preaching prenup.
Yeah, he's preaching prenup. So, anyways, I mean that's definitely a fun one to debate.
Yeah. Well, I'm really excited about Big Storage Ventures, and I think you are too. I mean, do you have like, a final 2 cents or 2 words you want to share about that? Whether it's the vision, we could go down like where you see it, like what your goal is, why'd you start it, or anything that comes to your mind that you want to share about it.
Well, the vision is putting together a series of deals. So we know that there's pent up demand for people that want to invest in good deals. So our job is to make a well-oiled machine that can bring enough good deals to the table, because we're at this early phase in our career where we don't have an option. These first couple deals have to be home runs or great deals, because that's how our momentum gets started. So really what we're really waiting on is those deals, and that's what machine we're trying to create, is vetting deals, underwriting deals, making them work. Then once we get that and we have a flow of deals, we can scale this thing and we can provide lots of opportunities for people to participate. And so it's a lot of fun. I mean, we have a couple deals in the pipeline, but this business will grow to be, dozens, if not more, 50 to 100 people at some point that are involved in this machine, because we feel like we're in the golden age of storage, right? We feel like someday, maybe in 100 years, this asset class might be monopolized by one big business. But right now, there's enough opportunity out there for businesses like ours to go and we feel like we have a competitive advantage over other businesses.
Yeah, for sure. And I love when AJ talks about that, because, the comparison between apartments right now being a consolidated industry, being like there's probably less than 10% is mom and pop in apartments, and storage, I don't know, they estimate now around
over half.
Yeah, around 50%. So we still have like this huge opportunity, before this whole industry gets consolidated, to pick up on some of these asset classes, fix them up, and then maybe be one of those that exits with all the consolidation.
Big Storage Ventures will be like publicly traded.
We have to get Bridger on for the fun, because one thing I like, part of the goal, right, is to be able to bring people on, because it's actually way harder for a regular person to get into storage than you think.
The barrier of entry is mind blowing.
It's so hard to get in. Like, not only like you could have money, you could have a complementary business, it's still going to be really, really hard for you to get into the game. But think about, let's say you come in on, like, most people don't have tons and tons and tons of cash, like, to do it on there. Like, majority of the people, I don't know the stat, I'm going to get destroyed by it, but there's the one article about how many people in the country could supply a $500 emergency expense. It's like a teeny portion, a huge portion of the country could not finance a $500 emergency expense.
Right.
And so to contrast that with, for someone to have 25 or 50 or even 100 grand in the bank, now you're getting slimmer and slimmer and slimmer. So someone who has 25 or 50 grand, how hard is it going to be for them to get into storage or for them to get some passive income?
Right.
I mean, again, like, you could buy a REIT and all that fun stuff, but anyways, it's just
we hope to beat the REITs.
Yeah, I mean, you have an opportunity to find deals and to be able to operate them, run them at scale, a vertically integrated system. and to be able to bring people on that would never be able to otherwise. I mean, that's one thing that's powerful. Like, even if I wanted to, it would be really hard for me to just do this on my own.
Sure.
Because, like you bring the experience and, you know, like the balance sheet for financing, but even like experience, like banks, they're going to look, oh, you have a storage facility already. He's like, okay, you're put into this category. Like we talked financing with some other banks recently.
Yeah.
And they're like, when you talk to a new bank, they're like, okay, have you done a storage facility before? And if you haven't, you go into this category. And then if you have, you go into
discrimination.
Over here. Yeah, basically do. They have to.
That's storage facility privilege.
They have to, you know, when they're underwriting, because they're just it's all, you know, based on risk, and they measure that. And so it's like you're gonna have to jump through all these hoops over here, and then you're in this category, so it'll be pretty quick. We can get you some money. Like, we already have a storage facility. You don't even need money now. We could just give you a couple $1 million. We're literally
not that easy, but yes, you can. There's cool products like that.
Hypothetically speaking. So,
but I think that's that's the vision for Big Storage Ventures. I mean, we have limitless potential. I think those businesses can go as far as any other business. I don't think there's anything stopping us, especially together, because we have really complementary strengths. So I'm pumped for Big Storage Ventures and everything else we have coming through the pipeline. But I think, hopefully, I think the vision beyond that is just to start to look at other ways to help too, you know, like looking at ways that we can reach out. I love just talking to people about business, and I love just hearing what their goals are and giving my 2 cents as to what the best thing to do to get there, you know. So
that's a fun thing, and that's the sweet, you know, part about it. But yeah, I'm excited too. I think it's going to be pretty fun, and like we said, have a lot of opportunities coming in, and the sky's the limit. So yeah, I'm just thinking of Cameron.
Yeah.
How do you pronounce his last name?
Barsanti? Hope we didn't butcher that, man.
Shoot. Anyways, I'm going to read his book when it comes out. But he always says, like, one deal could change your life. Cam. I love Cam. But, like, the one deal could change your life. And that's, like, it's true. You know, one deal. Yeah. And you learn lessons from that. Like, Cam's now at the point where he's filtering again. You know, I don't want just a deal. I want these great deals.
Yeah.
And it's nice to have a network like that. But I think the same thing with us. So
we got lots of potential, man. Thanks for bringing up some of these old memories. I haven't told some of these stories. I tell a lot, but some of them I haven't remembered for a really long time.
We're gonna have to post like just how Big Ben came up with his name. That's gonna clear a lot of things up in the air.
Yeah, people will think I'm not as arrogant. I don't know. Some will think I'm arrogant.
Yeah, some might.
I'm a very polarizing person. I find that people either love me or hate me. So
sure.
We'll
see.
Let's. Hopefully, there's a few less that hate me, and they all love me after this.
Because your dad, yeah,
because I don't think I'm that big.
Well, cool.
Appreciate you, man.
Thank you.
That was another awesome episode of the Beyond Net Worth podcast.